Welcome to the Garden of Edun. Dami be asking the questions for the answers that you want to hear. All you gotta do is sit back, grab a chair, or listen up while you clean and cook. Take a leaf from the creative's book. These gems open your mind and your heart. Okay, the show's gonna start. Cheese! Welcome to the Garden of Edun, where ideas grow. I'm your host, Dami Edun, and today we have a very interesting guest, Lucy Norris. Lucy, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I am doing really good. I'm in Ireland right now, and I know we were speaking about the rain earlier. The sun has actually just come out, so I think it will be a nice enough evening. So yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah, I'm really gelled to hear that, but I'm happy for you that the sun's
Thank you.
that the sun's come out. And yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate you jumping on, and as a fellow content creator, you know how challenging sometimes getting these things done can be. And actually, even for us, we had a lot of times where we planned to do this, and then one of us had to drop out for one reason or the other. But I'm glad that we're finally making it happen. And just to give the listeners some context on you. Lucy is a podcaster, so she owns a podcast platform, What It's Like, where she interviews different people in various industries about what it's like to be those people. I hope I'm describing that in the right way.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
And Lucy's also a blogger. She has a personal blog, which read a couple articles on, which are quite interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Want to get into one of them in a little bit. And you're a content creator from Dublin, Ireland, as you mentioned. And I wanted to say or give you some praise, because I really love like your lovely sweet presence in your podcast and punchy delivery that you have in it. And sometimes I wish I could be as smooth like that sometimes, but a bit rough around the edges.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No, it's cool. Like I when I was listening to your podcast, I was like, oh yeah, I really want to adopt some of that for myself. So I'm trying bit by bit. But yeah, I want to get into, I guess, the first question that I have for you. And it's mainly around being in, I guess, like the media content space. And for myself, it wasn't something that I ever really fully thought I could do. Like when I was younger, it wasn't something that I thought, yeah, I'm going to be on TV, or I'm going to be on a platform or media platform and putting myself out there like that. And I thought that if that moment ever did come, I would have all the confidence in the world to do it. I'd have like loads of backing, and it would make sense, if that makes sense. But actually, it's this platform and any of the content that I put out has generally come through trial and error, really. So diving back into, I guess, your maybe like your childhood or teenage years, where did the interest for you to become a journalist stem from, if you remember?
Yeah, so I have kind of a funny story in how I got into it. So I've always been interested in performing arts, drama, singing, things like that since I've been tiny. So that's actually what I wanted to do when I left school. So in my final year of school, I was back and forth to London auditioning for drama school. And I didn't get in, obviously.
Oh no,
so
they were missing out, They were missing out.
But yeah, so that was kind of my first, I suppose, like my first knockback as well, in terms of the media industry, because I'd been interested in performing and in that world pretty much my whole life. I was definitely used to, the idea of rejection and the idea of the fact that you had to back yourself and, have confidence in your abilities and all that kind of thing. But it hadn't really happened to me on such a big scale in terms of the fact that I had to then pivot what I thought my life was going to be like after school, and
Yeah.
like my career options. I really wanted to do it, obviously, and then that didn't work out for me, so I had to kind of go back to what else I was good at, what else I enjoyed, in a really quick turnaround, because I
Mm.
was obviously living in Dublin, but I knew that I wanted to go to college in England. So UCAS was like closing and everything. It was super
Oh
stressful.
yeah.
I'd used up all my choices, all of that drama that goes along with that. Um, and I kind of had to quickly go back to, okay, I can't do this, but what else do I like? I loved English in school. I was always reading, always writing. And journalism isn't that far apart from performing, in a sense that, you can do broadcast journalism, which is presenting on TV or reading the news or whatever. It's still in that realm. And then obviously, like
Mm.
podcasting, you're speaking, you're presenting yourself in a way. So it did kind of align in that sense. And
Yeah.
yeah, like as I said, I had always had an interest in writing and that kind of thing. So it was like almost like a natural progression from that, but it definitely wasn't something that I grew up being obsessed with, being in love with, in terms of like, I know I want to be a journalist, I want to work for BBC, I want to read the news. It wasn't that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was definitely factors that came in from everywhere that then ultimately led to it. And I'm happy that it worked out that way, because I don't think I would have survived drama school. So
Yeah, it's actually funny because I've had a few of my friends on here who work in the acting profession, and they talk about just like how they thought getting into acting school was the thing that was gonna take their career to the next height, and then it actually was the beginning of a tough learning experience of like the level of rejection that they could get, and like how different it was being in that space as an adult versus as a child, where I guess you're still protected from some of the things that can happen in life. And when you get
yeah.
into that space as an adult and you have to now like juggle jobs and trying to get auditions and those different kind of things, how difficult it really is. So I guess you didn't have to go through that, which is good. But
Yeah.
I guess also it's quite interesting how you manage to pivot, because for a lot of people that can be quite daunting, having to change your idea of what it is you're going to be, because
Yeah.
if you've dreamt that path for ages and you kind of get told it's not going to happen, it can be a lot to take.
Yeah, I definitely was thrown for a little while. I'm not gonna say that it just happened. I was like, oh well, let's move on to this. Like, no, I was definitely heartbroken about
Yeah,
it. And but I think it was as well the time frame that I had was so short. I was also in the middle of doing my final, or not in the middle, but like in the middle of preparing for my final exams as well. So school was really hectic. Like, you know what it's like in your final year of school. Life is hard.
yeah,
So I didn't really have that much time. I knew I wanted to leave Ireland for a bit. So it was kind of just like, okay, quickly, let's make a decision that could work out, and I'll deal with the rest of it when it happens. So yeah,
yeah.
it was a learning curve for sure. But yeah, everything works out in the end, I suppose.
Yeah, and to be fair, that motto, I think, like, do what you can and see how it works out, is just the MO for life, really, because you
Yeah, for
can't.
sure.
I think, yeah, as you get older and you start making plans and seeing how they go, you're like, you can't really call a lot of this thing. Like, you can't really call a lot of how it's gonna happen. You just have to keep going with it, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think it's good to have plans for like a framework, but I think that it's vital to understand that they're probably not going to work out how you want them to. But obviously, like having
Yeah.
goals and stuff is good to keep you on some kind of a track.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Um, so at the moment, I'm actually in the process of writing a book, which is why I really
Wow.
dialed into that podcast that you did with Sophie. Um, and yeah, the book is about a young black superhero from London. I'm not saying it's me. It's not quite me. There might be injections of my personality in it, but it's not me. Um, and you know, through the process of actually writing that, it's in its, I think it's third draft now. So there's still a bit of a way to go, but you know, I've been working on it for about 3.5 years now. So quite a
Wow.
while. I wanted to learn from other creatives about like their journeys and how they got better at the skill sets that they needed to be good, and how they overcame obstacles, and then the opportunities that they were able to create from, I guess, just continually applying themselves and getting better and following through on the creative work that they were doing. So for yourself, like what inspired you specifically to start podcasting in the what it's like format, where you talk to people about what it's like to be them? Like what inspired that?
Yeah, I think I'd love to have some like, big grand answer. Like I knew exactly there was this moment, whatever, and everything fell into place. It wasn't really that.
Yeah.
It was so how I kind of came about even thinking about starting it. I was in my previous 9 to 5 and I had a really long commute. So I was commuting for 4 hours a day
Yeah.
on public transport. And I just got bored of listening to music, like my playlists were dead. So I started listening to podcasts. And obviously I'd heard
Yeah.
about them. This was like a year ago. I'd heard about them. I knew they were a thing, but I hadn't really ever delved into it. Um and the first one that I came across was How I Built This. I don't know if you've listened to it
Oh,
before, by Guy Raz.
yeah.
But he interviews loads of founders. So like the biggest founders in the world, like Instagram founders, Vice, all of them. And so I was listening to him, like binging his episodes. And I kind of
Yeah.
thought at this point, I'd obviously graduated from journalism. I had the skill set to do the actual physical recording, editing, uploading, and things like that. And podcasting to me was the easiest form to just start then and there. I think I love video as a medium. I think you can do so many things with film, and I'd obviously love to, like kind of have like chat show vibes, that kind of thing on a couch. But there's just so many
Yeah.
extra things that go into production that you have to think about, like studio space, all of that. And I just it was a side thing that I was gonna do. I didn't have the means
Mm,
or the capacity to dedicate time to that. Um, so that's kind of like, I suppose, like the physical, like the actual thought process behind why this came about. And then the formatting in terms
mm.
of wanting to interview people. I'm nosy. I'm like the nosiest person you'll ever meet. And I love talking to people. I love conversations. Conversations inspire me, and they're where I draw my ideas from. So you never know what you're gonna learn from just chatting to someone. And this was my excuse to just talk to people, all day, every
Yeah.
day. So I was like, okay, great. I want to know how people did this, because business is something that fascinates me, but I don't know if I'll ever do myself, because, there's so many things that kind of scare me about it or whatever. So that's kind of how I started. I started going down the founder route, wanting to know like how people opened like my favorite cafe in Dublin. I went to the owner and was like, hey, can I just ask you how you did this?
Oh,
Or, like different businesses. But then
yeah.
I realized my attention span is like a goldfish. Like one minute I'm thinking about this, one minute I'm thinking about this. Like I have so many different trains of thought running through my head all the time. So,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't want to box myself into the business side of stuff, because I also had interests in athletes, in musicians, in actors, in
Mm,
writers, therapists, life coaches, whatever. I just wanted to know anything and everything about different people's professions and how they got to be this buzzword that everyone loves to use, successful, and why they were successful versus the person sitting next to them on the bus that was in their 9 to 5 that they hated. What was it about that person that
mm.
got to be living their dream life versus everyone else? So I don't know if that answers your question. I probably rambled a lot, but that's kind of why I ended up wanting to interview people as opposed to starting a show where I sat and spoke. And I also think, you know, unless you you have something to say on a topic, I didn't really want to just share my thoughts, say, but it's just not me. It's like not my comfort zone, let's say,
Yeah.
because I don't feel like I'm educated enough on anything to sit and talk for 60 minutes on it. So that form of chatting was just not for me at the start. I wanted to talk to other people instead.
Yeah. I think I'm very similar to you in that respect, where I've thought about chatting for that long about something, but I just can't imagine just going like, right, setting up and going, yeah, I'm just going to talk about this one thing for ages.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really resonate with that, like talking with people and asking them about their journeys, and like you said, you learn so much from it. You learn like a lot, just like you might ask a question which is not related to something that you're necessarily doing, but the way that someone's answered, you're like, oh, I could use that for the way I'm thinking about XYZ topic or something else. And it's really useful. It's almost like you get the content as one thing, and then you also get a bit of an education
Yes.
in another sense as well. So you're kind of winning in two ways,
Yeah, that's
right?
100% it. Like, you can take bits and pieces from every aspect of life, every walk of life, and apply it to yourself and just alter it and change it to fit you and what you need. But as you said, like, it's fully been an education for me, like an education in everything. So it's been so
Yeah.
enjoyable.
No, definitely. I feel you. Like we're on the same page on this. It's fun.
Yeah.
So earlier I mentioned that I really like understanding how people have improved their skill sets and how they what process they choose to learn to get better. So for you, what skills have you worked on to improve the quality of your content and your ability as an interviewer slash hoster over time? What have you worked on?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a hard question because I do feel like, in terms of like definitely interview style and things like that, a lot of it is just natural instinct. I think in order to be a good interview, you have to have genuine curiosity about the subject. And that's kind of then feeding into the thought process behind what guests you choose to invite on. I think it should always be someone that you like. I'll come across people and I will see something that they've done, and then a question will come into mind about something, and then I'll get them on to like ask that one specific question, obviously then,
Mm,
framed around the rest of the story. But I think as an interviewer, obviously confidence is always going to be a thing that you'll always work on. Like, I'm not going to
yeah,
sit here and say I'm the most confident person in the world. I back myself 100%. Like, no, like, I don't think many people do. It's something you definitely struggle with. And even,
yeah.
before I interview someone, like, I still get a little bit of nerves, before the Zoom connects or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, the butterflies are
I'm
going. You're
ex-
like, oh my God.
I am
Um,
exactly the same there.
yeah,
I was
right.
even
It's
today, I was a bit like, oh, okay, another
oh
one to do, bit nervy.
no. No, but like, and then it's like 2 minutes in and you're just completely relaxed. You just got to make that bit of small talk and you're totally fine. I'm terrible at
Yeah.
small talk though. That was one thing in the beginning. I was like, oh God. Um, but yeah, I think for me, yeah, the interviewing thing, it's something that I enjoyed. So you push past the nerves, you push past the little bit of insecurity, and you just you I feel like you just go with it because you know there's gonna work out in the end, because you just have this kind of natural instinct towards asking questions. It's just a conversation. So it's really not that bad at the end of the day. So that
Yeah.
I think has been worked on maybe just in my subconscious or in practice. The more you do it, obviously, the more secure you're gonna feel about it, the more confident you're gonna feel about it. Um, the skills, as I said, in terms of like physical
Mm,
production, so I learned them at uni. So I didn't, I suppose, like,
okay.
that was where I did a lot of like honing my craft, inverted commas there. But
Yeah.
like, I learned how to edit there. I learned how to, like, about microphones, things like that, in university. So yeah, I mean, you can always improve in editing and that kind of thing. YouTube is everyone's lifesaver. Everyone needs to use that. If you're not using it already, I'm sure they are. But like, there's a video on anything and
Mm,
everything, so there's no excuse really. You can just watch a video, it'll tell you how to fix things. So yeah, anytime I get stuck, just check something out on there. But I definitely owe a lot of my ability now in terms of production to university.
yeah, but as you said, like especially for those listening, if they're feeling like they want to start something, don't use uni as an excuse. You can still learn on YouTube, as Lucy said. But
Yes.
yeah, no, I'm sure there's probably like a few nuances that like take you a bit further along from what you learn at uni. Because even just going on a random tangent, like I record music as well.
Oh,
So
cool.
I've got a few songs in the pipeline, one on Spotify, just one. So I'm
Oh.
technically not an artist yet. I feel like when I hit three, then I can say, yeah, I'm a recorded artist. But I usually go to the studio with one of my good friends, and he went to uni to do, I think, music production. So we started going to these studios, pirate studios, I think they're called. And no, they're not sponsoring me. If anyone's thinking that. And you take your laptop and you have to set up the studio yourself. And the way
Okay.
it's advertised is like it's a plug-in type, environment where you just take your laptop, plug in, and you just like record. But every time I've been, I'm just there and I'm like, I don't understand any of these wires. I don't know what's happening on my laptop. And he just comes in and does everything. And I'm just like, bro, without you, nothing would be happening today. So like
Yeah.
those skills that you have like are really valuable, like really, really valuable. So now I see how that helps with the quality of your work. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
so yeah, in terms of guests now, so obviously, like you said, you generally do have an affinity towards the people that you want to bring on because you see some of the things that they're doing, and like you said, a question pops up in your head, and you have a genuine curiosity into the guests that you have, um, and you wouldn't ask them on if you didn't like them ultimately, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I would say that there's definitely been some episodes and some guests that have been like my favorite to have on. So two that I think about, one person called Sense and another guy called Neji. And the reasons I really enjoyed their like doing their podcast is we got really deep into like the philosophy of why they do what they do, like the philosophies that they believe in life, and how they've like injected it into the creative output that they have. And like I just really enjoyed those conversations because even though I'd known those people, I didn't know that they had those philosophies running in the background, influencing how they put out their work. So for yourself, obviously you've interviewed quite a lot of different guests now. Who would you say maybe one or two of them that have been your favorite, and why?
This is such a hard question because
I know.
it's like picking, well, I can imagine it's like picking your favorite child. I do not have children, so I don't know what that is like. But oh, there was one early on, and I do always bring this one up, but it's something that really just put things into perspective for me in the moment.
Mm,
JM Correa, I don't know if you know who that is, but he is a Formula
no.
2 racer. So race car
Oh,
driving.
okay.
And I don't know if you've watched the documentary Drive to Survive on Netflix. If you haven't, you need to watch it. It's amazing.
Okay.
On Formula One. But there was this big crash, and basically he was involved in the crash with another guy who died. And
Ooh,
he like lost mobility in his leg, and basically like his whole life's work came
wow.
crashing down, quite literally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I interviewed him, and I think he was 19 at the time. His attitude towards life and his, positivity and his refusal to let this situation, now define his future and drag him down was just so inspiring to me. and so motivating. And I kind of always think back to that if I'm having a time when I don't know, I just can't be bothered to do anything. It does creep back into my mind where it's like, remember that conversation, and so that episode definitely stuck with me a lot. It's nice, I think, as well, you've probably had it too, when something comes out of it that you don't expect, and you have a conversation that's really unexpected, or you hear things about a person, or they open up in a way that you didn't think that they would. So that one was really, inspirational, really memorable for me. A second one, God, it is hard. I think, I'm trying to pick now. You've put me on the spot. I think there's one conversation I had with a guy called Funds Jacobs. He was kind of like an investor, an entrepreneur. He'd done a lot of different things, and I think with this one it was really, really nice as well, because when you've been chasing someone for a while, it was kind of an accomplishment to get him, because he was such a busy person. Like, there was never any availability, and I just kept at it because I knew I wanted to talk to him. And eventually he found space, and he let me chat to him. So that was an accomplishment to get him on. And then we just had a really great conversation. And, as you said, delving so deep into just life and what it's really like to be in your 20s, and the realities of that, trying to keep up with this expectation of being a millionaire and super successful at 25, how to pick yourself up when things don't go right, all of that kind of thing. I just remember that conversation as being really enjoyable. But honestly, like, I know everyone probably says this, but I thoroughly enjoy every conversation I have. And if I don't think there's value in something, I won't put it out there. So everything that is on the platform is something that I took something away from. So I feel like everyone else will too. So yeah, every single conversation I've had has stuck in my head for some reason.
Yeah, and similarly to you, and just to add that caveat to everyone that's been on my platform too, like, I've really enjoyed all the episodes as well. Like, it's all part of your own individual journey, and also like you said, in every single episode something like comes up where you weren't expecting it, or like you ask them a question and they go deep into something which you didn't even know had any like specific depth to it, but once they do, you're like, oh yeah, I really appreciate learning about that, actually. So yeah, just want to add that caveat before anyone's in my DMs like, hey man, I thought we had a really good time, what's going on?
Yeah, what about
me? Slightly similar to the last question, actually. So I had someone called Jade Carvalho on the podcast a few episodes ago, and she mentioned something which she had a quote from it, which was something like, discipline is the opposite of self-doubt. Now, I actually don't know if that's true, and I don't know if it actually is, but the way she said it, I was like, yeah, that's actually really good. Like, I don't even care if that's not true. I'm going to use that. And so every time I've been feeling self-doubt, or feeling, those feelings of lack of self-belief, and you're like, is this really good? Should I do this? You know how it is.
Yeah.
That phrase has always popped back into my head. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'll just use that because it's a good tool to have. I guess it's slightly similar to the last question, but maybe it might actually be different for you, and like it might have come from a different guest. But what's the best lesson that you've learned from the guests that you've had on your podcast?
Yeah, so again, another really great question, but really hard question, because I think because of the array of industries and things the people I've spoken to, there's obviously the advice and the learnings have come in completely different contexts, but There was one interview with Tyler Clark, who was a finalist on SAS Who Dares Wins, and she's a bodybuilder as well, like a champion bodybuilder. And she went through some really, really difficult times in her life. She had really bad depression and anxiety, I want to say, but that might be wrong. Um, and she said to me, she was chatting about how she picks herself up on days that are just, should be total write offs, that are just too difficult. I'm going to paraphrase, but it was, emotions are temporary. Everything that you're feeling is temporary. It's not going to last. Just ride the wave, it will be different in an hour. It will be different in 5 hours. It will be different tomorrow. And it won't matter. So that is genuinely something that when I am having a time when it's just hard, or I'm just losing hope a little bit, I think back to what she said, and it was like, this is temporary. This is not permanent. I can change this. This will pass. Just take a deep breath, chill for a second. It'll be fine in 5 minutes, That
Yeah.
mentality really, really has stuck with me, and it has helped. So definitely, there's been so many memorable lines and pieces of advice and everything, but I think that's one thing that I actually apply on a daily basis to my thought process.
Yeah, that temporary that realization that everything is temporary can be scary, but also
Yeah.
helpful. But also helpful too, especially when things are going difficult. So yeah, that's definitely a good thing to remember, because with, I think, like, just with any, I guess when you're striving to achieve anything, it's just going to be hard. Like, it just, because it takes time, it takes consistency, it takes a lot of, yeah, it just takes a lot of work. So, you just remembering that is can be massive, because without that it could lead to you losing the pace, or just clocking off completely, and then you're not able to follow through, and can be quite sad.
Exactly. Yeah, and the other side of it is, just on that point that you said, like, if it's not hard, it won't be worth it in the end. Like, everyone knows that feeling when they've gone through a ridiculously difficult patch, or they've, worked so hard for something, whether it's like in the gym or studying, or, grinding out the hours at the desk. When you get that thing that you've been working for, it's so much sweeter if
Mm,
it's been hard, because you get that
yeah,
double sense of satisfaction of getting the thing and knowing that you can get yourself to that place. So, yeah, I think that's
yeah,
another thing to remember is like, yeah, it's hard, but it's making it more worth it the harder it is.
yeah, definitely, because that reference experience going forwards with whatever you choose to do is so valuable, because like, no matter what, I can get there, like where I'm aiming
Yeah.
for, once you've gone through that patch. So yeah, it's definitely valuable. Talking about consistency, actually, I just wanted to say well done on reaching, I think it's episode 100, and is it 18 now that you're on?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, I have to say, like, massive congrats for reaching that, because
Thank
my
you.
God, that is difficult. Like, I, like, for myself, I've really struggled to be consistent, because I'm trying to do a lot of different things. Similar to you, because you're also like blogging and working as a journalist, and loads of other things. So, like, being consistent enough to reach that level, like, I really commend you on that. Like,
Oh,
seriously.
thank you. Thank you.
Um, Going into more of the nuts and bolts, though, what things and what tools have helped you be consistent enough to hit that, like, 100 plus milestone without burning out, or without wanting to quit, or any of the things which can really stop a lot of people? I think I was listening to a podcast um a few weeks ago, and I think they were mentioning that some stat, like 85% of podcasts that get started only reach like 7 episodes or something before
Yeah, I've
they
heard that
just
as
stop.
well.
So for you, how have you managed to, like, completely knock that figure out of the park and end up over 100? What's worked for you?
Yeah, so I suppose there's a few things that go into this, and I'll preface it by saying there was 100% times that I wanted to quit, and that I wanted
Yeah.
to give up, and yeah, I've definitely experienced a bit of burnout with it as well, with life in general, but that aspect of it too,
Yeah.
over the last while. So I think quarantine or COVID, whatever that time period you want to call it,
Yeah.
helped because like the first lockdown, I just had this mad burst of motivation. I was like, okay, I'm gonna, because we all
Mm.
thought it was only gonna be like 2 months, 3 months. It was like, right, for these 3 months, I'm gonna smash this out. Like I have no
Yeah.
excuse, you know. And so I was like, I work in journalism and digital marketing as well. Like that's my day job. And then I
Mm.
would just, but because you're working from home, you're sitting at your desk, you can fire off an email every so often, to set up interviews and stuff because you have this, you're working from home, you're chained to your desk. So,
Yeah.
you have extra time. And I think what motivated me, first of all, was just a love for it. I think it's that classic thing,
Mm.
but don't go into anything that you're not being paid for if you don't love it, because what's the point? There's no quick fix in this, especially podcasting. Like I don't know about YouTube or any of that, but you're not going to get paid for this for like a long time. So there's
Yeah.
no point if you think, this is an extra, just like that whole social media funnel thing where it's like an extra route to be like famous on social media or whatever. It's not, like that's not gonna happen. It's it's a lot of work. But I just loved it. I got so much enjoyment out of it. It helped me through those quarantine times, having that conversation with someone. I think I was interviewing at one point like every day. So
Wow. What, over those 2 to 3 months?
yeah, because like
Wow.
not, I'd say during a week I would have probably like minimum 4 interviews, maybe when it was a busy time, because I was putting out 2 episodes a week, so I needed that content.
Wow.
But having those conversations with people from around the world gave me the sense of connection as well,
Mm.
that we were all missing so much. And just because that's the great thing about podcasting, it's just a chat, it's a conversation. Yes, you're talking about serious things. Yes, you're talking to, you know, high profile, successful people or whatever. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you're just having a conversation. And who doesn't like to do that? So that was
Yeah.
kind of the motivation. And then also, yeah, I just loved putting out the conversations. I love seeing the reaction. And maybe it was a bit of luck as well. I don't know, that I just got loads of responses. So I was getting people saying,
Mm.
yeah, so why would I turn them down? Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
So I just kept saying yes. I just kept interviewing. And then before I knew it, I was at 100. But definitely there was some days when, because I was putting out 2 a week, that was obviously like editing twice a week as well. And like it's long to
Yeah.
listen back to the conversations that you've already had as well.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, so
Literally.
there was definitely times, yeah, there was times when I was kind of fed up with it or tired and things like that. But um I didn't want to take a week off because as well it was like that consistency thing, I was like, no, I
Yeah.
have to stick. It was almost like a competitive thing as well. I was like, I have to
Yeah.
stick to it. But then definitely I hit 100 around Christmas time, I think. And I just took some time off over January, I
Mm.
think, as well. Like, and you do hit a stage. Even now I'm finding it more difficult. I don't know if it's because like life's going back to normal. It's summer, people are away. It also does depend on other people saying yes to you. And sometimes you hit
Yeah.
a period when no one's available. And then that's just it. You can't put episodes out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into it, but ultimately it's just a love for it, enjoyment. It's my hobby. It's what I like to do in my
Mm.
spare time. So that's just kind of how it culminated into 100 episodes.
Oh, that's so sick to hear. Like you just, because I think with the pandemic, like a lot of people became quite uncertain, and understandably so. It's an unprecedented time for everybody on the planet.
Yeah.
But it's just sick to hear that you were like, no, I'm gonna go ham right now for these like few months, like
I
four
did, until I
days,
realized it
4 weeks
wasn't gonna
even.
be just a few months, and then my body was like, "Okay, please, like we're tired now, stop."
Yeah. But no, it's a testament to, the hard work you put in. And I guess it's another sign of like, if you want to achieve, like reach a certain goal, and of course you want to, um, you know, you're still doing episodes, you still enjoy the process, but to get to a point where, you know, 100, like a lot of people look at 100 as a milestone. I know I do, like 100 episodes, like that's a good milestone to hit, to know that you know, that I'm committed to this, you
Yeah,
know?
you're in it for the long run.
Exactly. It's a good one to be like, right, I've hit the 3-figure mark. I'm here now. No one can question it. I'm here. I can't question it. Let's keep it rolling.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
sick that you hit that milestone. But yeah, I definitely hear like how difficult it can be, especially now life's coming back to normal. And I've definitely experienced it where no one's available and you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
what am I gonna do now? And it comes back to us talking about doing the podcast solo and thinking about, oh, can I do that? Is it really something I want to do? So yeah, interesting to know that similar has happened with you as well. But I guess
Yeah, definitely.
you're still putting them out regularly. So no, it's good to see.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
so I noticed reading your blog now, just kind of swinging over to that piece of content that you're putting out or that you put out in the past. I noticed the story on your blog where you were talking about what you would tell yourself as a fresher. Now, I really like
Oh,
this article for two
okay.
reasons. I really like this article for two reasons. One, because it took me back to uni and I was like, oh, I do really miss that. I really miss that. And it took me back to like my experiences in halls and all the things like just the madness in the kitchen or like the possibility of just going out all week if you wanted to. Like how mad is that? Like that you could have done that. Like it
Yeah.
seems crazy now, especially in the time room, but even just as an adult to think about going out Monday all the way through to Sunday.
It makes me tired. Like I actually feel the pain of it thinking about it. But I
Yeah.
used to do it 5 times a week, like we were out, and
Yeah.
I feel old.
You had the energy for it. I don't know where it came. Like you could go out and just not feel tired
I
every
know.
night.
It was
Crazy.
the best.
And I think another part I really liked is when you were talking about avoiding the drama, definitely, because there's a lot of that going on. A
Mhm.
lot, a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but I wanted to kind of contextualize that for what you're doing now and ask you what you would say to yourself about the journey of creating a podcast and how different has that been to your expectations that you
Sorry,
had
can you
going
just
in.
sorry to interrupt you. Can you repeat that question just but you just cut out, sorry.
Oh, no worries, that's fine. I was just saying how or what would you say to yourself about the journey of creating a podcast, similar to what you said to yourself about being a fresher, and how different has the podcast experience been to your expectations?
Okay. First of all, start earlier. Like you mentioned the going
Mm,
out thing. I took so much advantage of that. I was out way too much as a uni student, but there was so many days where I sat in my room and watched Netflix, and I had all the tools, I had all the skills, is what I was learning,
yeah,
what I was studying, and I didn't do anything with them at the time. Obviously, I feel like everyone says that about uni. They look back. Oh, there is the few that started billion-dollar companies at uni or whatever, but we can't all be like them. So,
nah, can't all be gym
I think
sharks.
yeah, no, we can't. But you do look back at all that wasted time and think, oh,
Yeah,
if I'd have started then, where would I be now? But obviously, life happens the way it does for a reason. You learn so many things in those times, in those middle parts when you wish you would have been doing something else. Um, I think I don't really know because I feel like I didn't really have a lot of expectations as to how this was going to turn out. Obviously, you started and you want something to be successful that you start, but like I wanted it to be as much as I did it because I was loving it, or it was like feeding something that I loved. Obviously, as a journalist, I want a body of work to show. So it was more that I was starting it as well as a bit of a portfolio so that I could, when
Mm,
I was going to try and find jobs, I could say, I'm doing this as well. I'm using my initiative to do this, and I've produced this by
yeah,
myself, and I've got this person and things. So I really didn't start with any aims or goals that was like, hit this many downloads, hit this many followers, have this person on. So I didn't have expectations in that sense. And I think that's maybe why I stuck at it for so long, because I wasn't meeting disappointment in that way, because I feel like if you start with, I need to have 10,000 followers in 2 months, for this to be successful, or whatever it is that those like number figure goals that everyone is so obsessed with, because it is a form of
yeah,
currency these days, you're valued on how many people follow you. So
yeah,
I feel like if you start like that, you're going to be met with disappointment. It's all going to get too much. You're going to be stressed. You're going to get embarrassed. You're going to lose confidence. So I didn't have that. So I feel like that helped me a lot. So there wasn't
mm.
expectations. When people replied to my emails, I was like, oh my God, we're in business. Like, yay. It was more of that kind of an approach to it. So I would kind of just say there's not a lot I would change in how I started it, apart from starting
Mm,
it earlier. Maybe I would have gone down the video route as well, tried a little bit harder at that. Um, but yeah, sorry, it's a really bad answer to your question, but I don't know, I didn't have expectations, so I didn't not meet any of them, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, even though there you didn't have expectation, that's a really good thing to know. Like even for people listening who want to start something, like knowing that you don't need to have expectations and you can still just follow the process is good. Because yeah, those expectations of like, yeah, I'm gonna have 100K followers in like half a year, and I'm gonna do this, that, and the other in this amount of time, can be really can cause a lot of anxiety when you're not gonna get close to that, instead of
Yeah,
just allowing things to develop naturally, which
yeah.
is more healthy, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the fastest and easiest way to become disheartened with something.
Mm.
Because I don't really I mean, I feel like everyone has been trying to understand social media since it came into existence, and no one is
Yeah,
interviewed influencers that have 500K whatever. No one is able to tell you how they got there, because they just did. It's just something that, like, I can't really speak on it because I don't know, but yeah, I think
yeah.
just not having the expectations. And also, this is kind of like one of the only things that I've ever started without thinking about it too much, which is
Mm.
weird. Like, it kind of just happened, because everything else, I'm such an overthinker. Like, I will have thought out the beginning, middle, end, and then the end after that, and the what ifs, all of that, before I even like begin to start anything. And I think people
Yeah,
have a lot of that towards podcasting as well, because it's a new medium, it's an oversaturated medium, and people just, I don't know, have so many weird ideas about it that it's the most complicated thing in the world to do. It's not. You need a microphone and a laptop to plug it into. That's pretty much it.
yeah.
So yeah, like, don't overthink it before you start. Have a name, a logo if you want, but it's not necessary.
Mm.
And something to record your voice on. And that's kind of it. Just stop. I think it's the not overthinking, the stop putting barriers up, because there's no barriers to entry with this. And I think that's why it's taken off so much and why people love it so much.
Mm. Yeah, man. Big lesson there. Just gotta start. Everything is there pretty much, right? Just
Yeah,
gotta start.
definitely.
Yeah, I think we can, as humans in general, we can really get in the way of ourselves a lot more than we need to. A
100%.
lot
And
more.
I'm the queen of that as well. Like, I'm not saying, I'm here like I'm starting I have a book full of ideas that I haven't started yet. I'm getting to them. I'm still in the
Yeah.
thinking stages of everything, but
I love that.
yeah.
Baby
It's
steps, isn't it? First it's on
yeah, baby
paper,
steps,
then you
yeah.
just leave it in the back of you let your subconscious play around with it a little bit, and then
Yeah.
maybe after a couple of years you start. Good
Yeah,
habit.
exactly. At least you started that book though. That's something that's still on in my ideas book.
You know what? Literally, like, I don't know how I've got to the stage except I just kept writing. That's literally like, yeah, there's some things that I got help with and like I guess more technical aspects of the book, but ultimately I was just writing and just kept writing.
You just
like sometimes
started.
I just started
Yeah.
and I was like, right, I'm just gonna write. Even if it was rubbish, like some of the pages I look back on and I'm like, rah, I came out with that. That is
Yeah.
mad.
I love when that happens.
Yeah. Or like I'll be reading reading a part that I did and I'm like, I know what I was doing. I was just rushing here. Like I wanted to skip this part of the story and just get to the juicy like scenes. So I just rushed that. So, but you know what? It's there to work on now. I guess I look at it like, and I think I start looking at any creative project like, I guess like a sculpture. First, you have like this big piece of rock that is just ugly and it has nothing to it to most people, right? But then you just start bit by bit, just kind of sculpting
chipping
away, and then slowly it just starts to become something. And then when you see it, that's when like you're in, like you're not gonna stop until it's done.
Yeah.
And yeah, I quite like that about the creative process. So yeah, it sounds like it's similar for you with the What It's Like pods.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely has been. But yeah, just starting. It's the hardest thing to do in life, but the most rewarding thing. So
yes, definitely. We've mentioned it a few times over the course of this podcast, which is the fact that we need other people to do our podcast. Like we need other people. We need them.
Yeah.
Otherwise we can't record an episode. And that in and of itself can really be a hustle, especially when there's like specific guests that you want on and you know that they're probably being asked by hundreds of other people to do so many different things. And you know, that can be quite challenging. I actually listened to one of your episodes with Dominic McGregor, who is from Social Chain, which is that massive like marketing agency, and I think their co-founder is Stephen Bartlett. Stephen Bartlett, that's his name. Yeah. And I was like, oh, rah, this is quite a big guest. Like I was definitely, I listened to that one because I work in the marketing field as well and in influencer marketing too. So that was a really interesting one to listen to, just to hear someone who founded a company when influencer marketing wasn't even like known as that when they started it. So I wanted to ask you, in your own opinion, who's the biggest guest that you got on the podcast that seemed almost impossible to get? And what did you do to get them on? Like what tactics did you pull if you had to get someone like that on your podcast?
Yeah, so with Dom, it was a process as well because obviously he's so busy. So I think I was emailing him for probably a year to try and get him on. Yeah, like I find, that's the part as well that people don't see. Is that's what I think people talk about when they talk about it being hard work. Like it's not just you send an email, you get a reply. Like sometimes it does work like that. It's great when that happens, amazing. But other times you have to just bite the bullet and like follow up and, you know, send the email where you're like, so sorry I'm being such a pest, but you know, do you still have time for this? So yeah, I send like a pitch email first of all. If I can connect with them on LinkedIn, I try and do that as well. And you don't want to be too, like, you don't want to harass people. Like, you can't do that. You know, there's a line. But yeah, I think like people are very receptive to you following up as well because everyone's busy. Everyone has a full inbox. Sometimes they skim over it, they open it, and they forget to reply or something like that. So no one's going to be angry at you if you follow up, just saying, hey, I'm just checking if you got that email, would really
Mm,
love to share your story. It's good if you can add in something personal to them that you've either, if they've written a book, that you've read it, or just
mm,
something that shows that it's not a generic email and you really are interested in hearing what they have to say.
yeah.
So really haven't pulled any like mad tricks or anything like that, nothing crazy. It's just been emails, and I suppose people are interested enough to respond and to want to hop on and chat with me. So um I think it's just all about that follow up. It's all about the persistence. If they say to you, yeah, sure, but now's not the right time. Can you get back to me in like
Mm,
a few months or whatever? Like I make a note of it. I'm like, September, get back to whatever, whoever. And I do. And they're
yeah.
like, oh, I didn't think you were actually going to come back. I'm like, yeah, but you told me to, so I'm here.
Yeah.
And people appreciate that persistence as well, because obviously
Mm,
it makes them feel appreciated too, that you've gone out of your way to remember that they said you can contact them in October, and you do. So it's just about showing up, being persistent. Um, and yeah, it all just comes from having that genuine interest in that subject or that person, that you are not willing to let it go until you get to face it.
mm. Yeah, you showed the hunger when you was like, all right, September, bet I'm back. Here I
Yeah,
am.
September 1st. Hey.
No, that's really good actually. I think I'd not even thought about LinkedIn, as obvious as it is, because it's right there. It's got, most people are working in a profession where they're going to be on LinkedIn to access opportunities. So yeah, that might actually, it's a good space to get people where they might otherwise be more difficult to reach out to. And I think definitely including personal things as well can
Yeah.
help, because then they know that you're not putting out a template. Like, I understand templates can work and can be good, but I feel like when you add a personable touch, it definitely adds weight to whatever you're asking someone to do, especially if you're asking for their time, because it's quite valuable, especially if they're busy. So yeah, definitely think that's like a good lesson to take from that experience. Um, so actually referencing that same podcast that you did with Dominic, I noticed there was a point in the podcast where you tackled a difficult question about him and drinking. And I remember I had a moment where I had to ask a really difficult question, or it felt difficult to me, with one of my guests, because she had an OnlyFans account, and I was really curious, like, what is it like to actually have an OnlyFans account? Because I don't know. And I'm,
Yeah.
with the way the internet's moving, I'm just like curious, because I have no one that I know that has one. So I was just interested. And to be fair, it was a little bit tense when I did. I felt that. Um, but for you, how do you generally navigate asking tough questions when you're, making content with people, and you're curious, but it could be a little bit tense. How do you generally try and navigate that?
Yeah, I think it's always a difficult part of the job. I suppose I always kind of was a bit more used to it, say, than a person that is just into podcasting, because obviously in journalism you always have to ask the difficult questions too. Um,
Mm,
for me, I don't really beat around the bush, to be honest. I just go straight in with it. I'm pretty blunt with it, like if it's a question I want to ask, I ask it. And to be honest, like majority of people that are willing to kind of speak openly about their story and things like that won't mind about details. It's helpful to, I suppose, make you relax more. If you do your research before, I knew that Dom spoke openly about his alcoholism, and he'd given talks about it, and he's an advocate for it, or for prevention against it. So um, I knew that was a topic that he was okay with speaking with. But
mm,
you can always preface anything by saying, okay, the next question I want to ask you, like, I wanted to talk to you about this. It's totally fine if you don't want to answer anything. You just let me know and we'll move on. But ask the question. I think it's almost
Yeah.
worse if you ask it in a really obscure roundabout way because then everyone's confused. They're not really sure if you're touching on that. You've now made it really obvious that this is a really difficult question for you to ask. Do you know what I mean? Because you're
Mm,
not just asking the question like how you would ask anything else. You're alerting to the fact you're uncomfortable. Now you're making them uncomfortable. They don't know if they should answer it because it's an uncomfortable topic. Like it
ooh,
gets messy if you can't approach it with confidence. And you
yeah.
just have to be okay with sitting in the awkwardness if it is awkward and just it's it's your job to ask a question. You asked a question. You're not insulting someone. Don't phrase it in a insulting way and you'll be fine. And
Yeah.
they'll respect you for it. And if anything goes wrong, all you can do is just apologize, but it's part of it and you just have to learn to sit with it, I think.
Yeah, definitely sitting with that pressure is a experience in in itself. But once you get through it, you're like, okay, maybe I could do it again. Do you ever like press on anything when you're talking to guests? Like if they've kind of skirted over something, would you ever like press it? Or do you generally tend to leave it? I'm just curious.
I think it depends what it is. I can't really think of a scenario where that's happened, but I think you also have to come away from the conversation feeling like you got out of it what you went in for.
Yeah,
So if there's something that you really want to get out of the person or you're really curious
yeah,
to know, if they're not answering it, you can just ask it again. I probably wouldn't ask it more than twice. Um,
yeah.
you know, because then the first time they might not have been sure if you were asking it, the second time they know, and if they don't want to answer it, they don't want to answer it, and don't be that person that's screaming at someone
Yeah,
to answer a question. But yeah, I think asking it twice is fine, and then just gotta cut your losses and move on.
yeah. You heard it here from Lucy first, guys. Ask twice and then leave it because once you ask the third time, you're literally holding a gun to their head, basically.
Yeah, and you have to remember the position of the guest as well. Like, well, I don't know about you, but I'm not in a position to financially compensate people for coming on my podcast. So they're giving up their
Yeah,
time for free. They're helping me out. They're allowing me to do what I want to do. So, I'm not going to be nasty to them either. But
yeah.
at the same time, you have to stick to your guns and you have to keep the integrity of the conversation as well and like keep it true, keep it
Mm,
honest, keep it transparent. So you do have to ask the questions, I think.
yeah, most definitely. I think yeah, I like that. Two times and then out. So that's the tactic. Um so obviously I think you alluded to, working on the podcast yourself and building the platform by yourself. How do you manage the workload as a solo creator specifically? Because, like you said before, there's so many parts that people don't see, like the editing, post production, cutting out the little clips, which sounds like honestly, yeah. Before I jumped on podcast, and I thought it's so easy to just you get the video or you get the piece of content, you clip it up, put it out on different channels, boom, boom, boom. It's all easy. But my God, getting clips for anything and like for different platforms as well is so long. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
it's
it's
not
so
fun.
long. So obviously with yourself, you've been really consistent, and I've seen that not only on your podcast platform itself, but your Instagram channel and other places. So how do you manage that workload as a solo creator? Because there is a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, so I think as well, just like I have so much respect for everyone that kind of like does all of this on top of a job too, because like that's what we're all doing. We all have to make our money from somewhere if we're not making it from our passion projects. Um,
Mm,
I'd love to sit here and say I have a schedule. I'm so organized. I know what I'm doing. I'm the most unorganized person in the world. I have got better at doing it the day before, but I used to wake up at 5 a.m. and edit my episodes before they went out at 7. That's how I used to do
Wow.
it, because I just like was so unorganized. And I got to Sunday night and I was like, oh, I can't, I don't want to do it right now. So, I was like,
Oh wow.
I'll take it and I'll wake up. So I used to wake up and do it before in the morning. Um, Now I just do it the day before. I just happen to naturally be a very good last minute person. Like last minute things don't stress me out. So,
Ah,
um, yeah, I kind of like,
interesting.
I don't really know. I don't have a formula for you. I don't have a schedule, tips, or anything like that. I just get it done. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think obviously having a schedule and being organized is like the goal. It's the key. I think it's amazing. I'm just not that person. Um, so I just put in the hours when I have to. If it's waking up early or staying up later, I will just do that. Um, so yeah, and I think that you reach a point as well where you just like you make a decision in your life and you put your work first. And I've definitely done that this year and last year. I
Mm,
just decided to really, really focus on my career. I know that's so cliche, but
yeah.
yeah, I put that first, above other things. And I took that time when I needed to. I didn't second guess it if an interview came up that I had to do and I was going out or something like that, or I was going for lunch, my work came first. And that's how I managed to fit it in at the
Mm,
expense of other areas of my life, which I feel like everyone goes through that period at some point. But yeah, there's definitely sacrifice fitting it in. But I think hopefully one day it will be worth it.
yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I was hoping that you'd come out with like, yeah, I use this specific tool and it does
No.
does that for me,
No.
post it. That's the idealist in me. But it's funny because a lot of times when people talk about creating something and talk about sacrifice, and it sounds sexy, like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna
Yeah,
sacrifice, I'm gonna
it's not.
toil, until it comes to a point where it's like, raw, I was gonna go to that barbecue, or I was gonna go to that person's party, or I was gonna do this thing, and now I've got to do the work
Yeah.
now, but there's these other things that I wanted to do, and I have to say no so that this gets done. And like
Yeah.
that's like a real eye opener, and you're like, oh yeah, no, this is hard, because if you have to do this consistently, then yeah, you do have
Yeah.
to you do feel an element of sacrifice.
For sure. And like you have to be that person as well that does cancel. And that is hard to do sometimes, especially if you're not surrounded by people that are supportive of your goals and your dreams and all that kind of thing. You're gonna annoy some people along the way because they don't quite get it. But at the end of the day,
Mm,
like that's where that thing of focusing on yourself comes in. And you just I don't know, I just put my head down and because I know what I want and I believe that I can get it, but I know what I have to leave behind if I want it. So,
mm,
I made my peace with that. That's totally fine. And there isn't a quick fix. There's no way to schedule your life so perfectly that you get to do everything because you don't. That's why the word sacrifice exists. Like, no one gets to do everything?
yeah.
So, yeah, it's just part and parcel of it.
Those are true words. You know what? I feel like that might be my favorite quote from the podcast today. No one
Really?
gets to do everything. Right. Yeah. Um yeah, that's mad. Would you say that that's been the most challenging thing that you've had to deal with in starting the podcast, then? Just like having to really tell yourself, oh, I have to actually make the sacrifices now that I've started? Was there something else?
I think, yeah, that was part of it. Definitely trying to like rearrange different things to fit it in. But also for me, I've kind of seen myself not do things so many times before, wanted things so bad, and then just not for whatever reason made it happen for myself. This was a really big exercise in making something happen and coming to that realization that no one could do it for me. No one was going to create the opportunity for me. No one was going to sit on my ass and tell me to edit. No one was going to, set up guests for me. No one was going to make this happen except myself. And I finally, maybe it's age, I don't know, but I finally got to a point where I was like, I want this, so I'm going to make it
Yeah.
happen. And I'm not going to have another scenario where in 3 months' time, I'm looking back and saying, I wish I started that. I wish I did it, because I've done that with so many
Yeah.
other things. And I don't know if it was COVID just completely making everyone look at their lives differently, that
Yeah.
perspective shift, or whether it was just where I was at in my life. But yeah, it sounds so silly because it's such a small thing, we're like, oh, it's so dramatic over a podcast, but it taught me so much. And, it made me rethink everything, and I stuck to it, and I was proud of that.
Yeah. Through that tough process, it's brought out like elements of yourself that, maybe you didn't know you had. And that feeling is in and of itself is really good. So I don't think it's a small thing at all. I think when you've endeavored in something for so long, you can then have the empathy for someone else who's done it. I think you were saying it earlier, like when you've tried to do something significant, you then have an appreciation of other people who are also, striving and I guess being quote unquote successful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It would be interesting to know as well, actually, as we're drawing towards the end of the podcast, as you've interviewed many people who are quote unquote successful, has that changed what your opinion on success is?
I'm always scared of this question. Not that I get asked questions a lot, but because I ask everyone this question, and I'm always sitting there thinking,
Yeah.
like, oh God, I have no idea what I would say. um,
Now's the
but
time.
yeah, I know, on the spot. I think that success is such a subjective word. There's so many different ways you can approach it. Uh, for me, having heard kind of almost not every perspective, but 118 different perspectives on the word success, um,
Yeah.
I think I don't think it's a stationary thing that you can achieve. I think it's a concept that helps people get to places they want to be, helps people achieve things that they want to achieve. But I don't know if you can ever like grasp success. Do you know what I mean? You can ever reach out and
Mm,
and touch it, because every time you get something, there's going to be something else that you want. So then how can you really say you're successful if in your own mind you haven't got there yet, because the goalposts keep moving, that kind of a thing. So someone
yeah.
once told me in one of my episodes, success is a journey. It's all about the journey that you take to get to where you want to be, and everything that you learn along the way. So I think I'm more inclined to go with that definition, that it's about the
Mm.
journey. It's not about the destination. That's like, I feel like I'm a walking Pinterest board right now, but still.
I think my
I think
mum's
you
got
can
that
be,
somewhere up at home somewhere.
yeah,
Like,
it's
yeah,
yeah, in the kitchen or whatever.
yeah.
I think that you can, like, maybe I'm contradicting myself. I think you can be successful in terms of your life if you feel that you're fulfilled. I don't think
Mm,
happiness is success, because happiness is like a fleeting emotion. You don't feel that all the time, but you can
yeah.
feel fulfilled all the time. Even if you're having a bad day, you can still feel fulfilled, because
Mm,
it's like that wholesomeness. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
So I think that for me is success, and then always moving towards something is success, and constantly hitting marks. But yeah, it's something that I don't have like a full definition, because it's something I'm still learning. I'm 24, I'm still, striving for
Yeah.
so much. I'm still like working for so much. So I definitely haven't nailed that definition yet, because it's a concept that I'm
Mm,
still learning about. That's why I'm still asking people about it, because I don't know yet. But
yeah.
yeah, I definitely think it's to do with moving through life at a fulfilled pace and constantly achieving, so that you're never stood still.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely something that I think, um, especially in the day and age we're in now, it's a good conversation to have. What is how success is defined, and I think even constantly having a conversation about that, because, like you say, it changes as we, as we get older, as time goes on. And I think when you, like, I think the things that have made me curious about that particular area of life is when you look at people who are supposedly successful and see that they still have, struggles, or, really,
Yeah.
some of them facing really tough, situations, or even in the worst cases where, people unfortunately decide that life is too much for them, even though it may appear that they're successful. And then it does make you want to know, like, what that question, or what that thing, like, is what is success. And I'm guessing that's something that kind of influenced your exploration of that word as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's more a state of mind than anything else. I think success, yeah, it's how you view things. It's how, you can walk around thinking you're successful, and then who's to say that you're not, If you think you are, who's to say
Mm,
you're not? So I think it's more a state of mind, and I think that society loves to measure success against physical material things, financial figures, and that's never the case, as we've seen so much with the conversation opening up about mental health, and
yeah,
successful people. Yeah, I think it's changing. And as you said, I think it's really important to have these open conversations, because it's it's hopefully helping younger generations coming up not feel so much pressure when it comes to it,
yeah,
because it is a lot of pressure. As you know, we're both young people trying to find our way, and it's so much pressure when you get to certain ages. It's, do you have this? Do you have this? Like, you're not successful, but who's to say that you're not, So
yeah,
yeah, it's an ongoing open-ended conversation, I think, but it's good to have it.
yeah. So the summary is we're both successful as we are. Great.
Yeah, we're
Love
totally
it.
successful. We can just stop now.
Yeah. Yeah, we're good. We're good. um as I mentioned earlier, we're coming towards the end of the podcast. And one of my, I guess, final questions I have for you is, and it's really, I guess, in some way related to what we were just talking about in terms of success, but um, more about the mission that you have with the What It's Like podcast. For you right now, if you're, on that success journey, what at the moment is the goal, and is the mission for your podcast?
Yeah, I think for me, I honestly, there's been so many things and so many changes happening in my life that I haven't really thought too much about next steps. I'm just concentrating right now on getting back to rolling out episodes consistently, and continuing amazing conversations with amazing people. So I just want to keep the conversations growing. And I want to, expand the reach as well, so that
Mm,
more people can learn the way that I have. And I think that probably in the future I'll move across to video once I feel it's the right time to do that. And I would love to kind of turn it into, if we're thinking, like ballpark big, I'm coming for Graham Norton's job. That's my dream job.
come
So
on, Graham Norton, you heard it here. People are
yes,
going to be
so
pulling this up in like 10 years on whatever the
yeah,
TikTok of the
manifesting.
time is. Come on, it's happening now.
Yeah, so I'd love to turn it into that kind of a format as well. That's like the ultimate. So, yeah, big things. I hope. I'm still believing. So, yeah, we'll just see. But for now, it's all about keeping on that consistency. That sounds weird, but keeping the consistency going with it, and
Yeah,
just still enjoying it. I want to always enjoy it. I don't want to ever do anything in terms of passion projects that I don't enjoy. So, yeah.
that's brilliant. I think it's yeah, keeping that in mind, the enjoyment, because that's ultimately what you can get from it, especially when you're putting so much time in, and when it doesn't pay you straight away with anything, like no clout,
Exactly.
no money, no label of quote unquote success. Like, the only thing you can get is the enjoyment, in and of itself. And
Exactly.
yeah, like, I think with the video thing, you're already doing it. Like, you can do
Yeah.
it, you know? You can do it. You've been
True,
really
true,
good on
true.
today's one. Like, you can do
Oh,
it.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed having you on, and it's been a pleasure, Lucy. Like, and I'm sure for you, like being on the other side, it might have uh been a pleasurable experience, not having to direct the questions
Yeah,
and
no, it
host.
definitely was. It was, and I appreciate you asking me so much, wanting to hear my weird words of wisdom or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, thank you so much. I've had so much fun. You're a great host yourself, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. I appreciate that. For those listening who want to follow your journey and follow what you're doing, could you let them know where to find you? Especially, Graham Norton, because he has to do his research to make sure you don't take his job. So yeah, take it
Yes,
away, Lucy.
for the producers of Graham Norton's show, you can find me on at What It's Like Pod on Instagram, and my personal account is at Lucy Norris. And you can find my podcast What It's Like with Luce on all of your favorite podcast streaming sites, so Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you like to listen.
Brilliant. People, please go and follow Lucy and her journey, because I'm sure it's gonna be a mad one. It's gonna be a mad
I
one.
hope so.
Thanks everyone for listening. It's your boy Dami. Appreciate it once again, and I'll catch you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye.